Fastball USA's Mike Ryan is the baseball power training expert. Learn to hit harder and throw faster right now.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Mike Ryan from the Fastball USA Training Center, and thank you for joining us again to our second podcast event. And again, thanks for joining us. Again, this is Mike Ryan. I am the owner and director of baseball training and development at Fastball USA here in Chicago. Thanks for joining us for our second podcast event. We had a lot of good feedback on the first one, so we decided to have a second one. So lots going on here today. Today's topic is called, what are the scouts looking for? And the second question is to you and your kid, is your mission or is your practice actually matching what scouts are looking for? But before we go into that, I want to recognize a few people today. This past week was National Signing Day, and some of our students have already signed. More will be coming later in the winter, and we'll recognize them as that happens. But the other day we had 5 people sign, and that included Ethan Routson, who signed with Dallas Baptist University. Joey Hanley from North Central will be going to North Central College in Naperville, Illinois. And then you have Jack Bellinger, will be going to Illinois State University. Connor Rektorski will be going to Western Illinois University. And for softball, Anissa Iliopoulos, who will be going to Rutgers University. Very proud of all of them. One of the most amazing things about this is these are people that just didn't come in last year and start training. These are people that have been training quite a long time with us, dating back to being 7th graders. So you're talking about these people have put in 5-6 years in the training center. And ironically, all of them have the ingredients that you're looking for in athletes from a college coach, including power, and they all have throwing power and or hitting power, so that feeds well into our topic today. The other thing in this past week, we had another great camp put on by Ron Wolforth and the Texas Baseball Ranch. Ron and his staff came in this past weekend, and I believe it's the 17th or 18th camp he's done at Fastball USA, and it keeps getting better. They did a great job, tremendous feedback. We had 36 athletes in that camp, and one of the reasons why I bring it up now is we have now announced that there will be another camp at the end of January. The dates are January 29th, 30th, and 31st. So if you want to get a chance to work with Ron Wolforth and his staff, you can do so in that weekend of January 29th, 30th, and 31st. We will be sending out a mass email coming out starting, I believe, Monday night or Tuesday morning, so spots will go fast. So if you're pitching passionate, that's definitely an event you want to attend. So let's start off with this. Our topic today is, what are the scouts looking for? Because what I find is a lot of people really get kind of misguided in what they're looking for, and then very specifically their practice does not match what top colleges and what pro scouts are looking for. So that's what I'm going to try to help you with today. Starting with this. I know everybody talks about the 5 tools, but let me simplify this, because you can simplify it with what I refer to as the big 3. And the big 3 is really simple. Number 1 is arm strength. How fast and how far do you throw? Number 2 is how hard and how far do you hit? And number 3 is how fast do you run? Those are what I call the big 3. Now, out of the 5 tools, I believe those are really the ones that make people stand out the most, because the assumption is that if you throw hard, okay, it is easier to teach somebody to be more accurate or more mechanically efficient if you already throw hard. So scouts are not looking at a guy, for example, a pitcher throwing 78 to 82, saying, well, we can get him to 92. Okay, that's not what they're thinking. And if you're a contact or a slap hitter, okay, it's very difficult to say, all right, now we're going to turn this guy into a hard hitter or a power hitting guy. All right, and certainly if you don't run fast, people aren't sitting around going, we'll get them to run faster. Okay, and those three things is really what makes players stand out. So let's start with arm strength. Most people are surprised that when they go to, for example, when you go to a showcase, even if you're a shortstop, you go to shortstop at a showcase nowadays, they're hitting you ground balls at short, but there's a radar on the other end. They want to see how fast you can throw the ball across the diamond. And that magic number everybody thinks for pitchers is only for pitchers. It's that 90-mile-an-hour mark is also for position players. Then you have outfielders. You know, you get lined up in the outfield and you're throwing. First of all, they want to see how hard you throw the ball and how far you could throw the ball, for example, from right field to third base. And they're getting your throws measured in miles per hour. But there's a lot of people out there that just think of arm strength in miles per hour in terms of just pitchers. Yes, pitchers also, okay, will have to have that elite type of velocity, but that is not limited to pitchers. It includes position players. And then the other position that I think that it gets lost with is catchers. I see catchers all the time working on pop time and trying to get their pop time down. And I'm telling you, one way to get your pop time down is to throw the ball faster and be able to throw the ball further. And of course, you want to be working on quick and getting your throws down to 2 and being quick and efficient. But a catcher also needs to be able to throw the ball fast, and they're also radaring catchers on how hard they throw. So if you have a young athlete that aspires to play high level of baseball, it is really important that you're developing his ability to throw the ball from a young age throughout to when he's getting older. That is huge, and a lot of people do miss that. And again, if you're a pitcher, the big mistake and what people get sold on is the velocity will come. It'll just naturally come as you get older and stronger. And I'm here to tell you that is not the case. You know, if you're constantly working on just throw strikes or just get the ball over the plate or just be accurate, that is exactly what you become. You become a slower, accurate thrower. Okay, so that's important in terms of when we get to the part is what is your mission, what are you training for? Secondly, with hitting and hitting power, I think a mistake people make is they assume, well, my kid is just smaller, he's not a power hitter. Okay, so right there, I would say to you this, it's a good thing Dustin Pedroia did not buy into that thought process. And I would say this to you, number one, the smaller you are, the more you have to stand out. You have to stand out more than a bigger player. So what I mean by that is if you're a smaller player, you actually have to be the guy hitting the ball harder. You're the guy who's got to be hustling more, running faster, throwing harder in order to stand out. You have to be so good that they can't ignore you just because of your size. And a lot of people buy into that, well, it's just the fact of nature that I'm just a smaller guy, I won't be able to do that. And that is not the case at all. And don't mistake power just with home run power. Power could be how hard do you hit the ball. Are you a doubles hitter? Do you drive the baseball? Okay, and of course, hitting the ball out and having home run power is obviously a way to stand out. But don't lose sight of simply hitting the ball harder than everybody else helps you stand out. And then, of course, the last thing, running speed. Obviously, people are going to look at running speed and look at you and go, well, I can't get them to run much faster. So guys who can run faster are also going to have a chance to stand out. Now, a simple way to look at this is if you're going to be elite in any of those three categories, you need to be better than 90 to 95% of the people in your specific age group or your grade. So if you're going to be an elite thrower, you've got to be throwing as hard or harder than 90% of your group. If you're going to hit harder or farther, you've got to be hitting harder and farther than 90% or 95% of your peer group. And then the same thing with running speed. So I talk to people all the time about we really need to be good at the big three. And for some people, being good at 2 out of the big 3 is really enough. In other words, you can have a guy who can throw hard and hit with power might not have world-class running speed, but that may be enough depending on what position he plays. So in other words, that could be a catcher, a first baseman, a third baseman, a left fielder. But if you're a middle infielder, or you think you're a middle infielder, running speed is going to be a lot more important. If you're a center fielder, running speed is obviously going to be a lot more important, and even technically a right fielder, really outfielders in general. So hitting the ball, that's just one way to stand out. Now, some people will say, well, Coach, what about defense? You don't care about defense? I will tell you this. Defense, yes, is very important, but if you have a great glove and you have a weak arm, the chances of you standing out have seriously dropped. If you have a great glove and you can't drive the baseball, you've also seriously decreased your chances of playing at the next level. So, of course, defense is very important, but if you don't focus on the big three, it's going to be very difficult to stand out to Division I college programs, to pro scouts in your future. So my question to you for today's podcast is, does your training, does your mission in your practice match what the scouts are looking for? That is something everybody needs to ask, and very specifically, I think parents listening to this need to ask that, because you may have a young man at home that that's his passion. I want to play college baseball, or I want to be a professional baseball player or a Major League Baseball player. Instead of just dismissing it and going through reality and talking about the numbers, do everything you can to support that goal and that mission. And that is making sure when he's practicing, because he is practicing anyway, right? So hopefully, if he's practicing, make sure he's maximizing his time by practicing the right things. Your practice should match what the scouts are actually looking for. So I'm going to go through a few mistakes or a few common things that I see in people who are practicing with the wrong mission. So number one is you have somebody who's really caught up in just simply looking prettier. You have the look pretty person, and that means he has been told that there's one ideal mechanical model, and he needs to follow that mechanical model. And if he follows this mechanical model and he looks prettier, he is going to miraculously throw faster, hit harder, run fast, the whole thing. Okay? And that is, I'm telling you, for the most part, not true. Okay? So if his whole goal is to look pretty, he's not going to hit the ball as hard as he can. If his whole goal is to look pretty when he throws the ball, he's not going to throw the ball as fast as he can, because he has a different mission. And oftentimes players like that often become what I call their coach pleasers. And their whole mission starts to become the question that will commonly be asked to a coach is, hey, Coach, how did that look? Hey, Coach, how does this look? Hey, Coach, what do you think about that? And now really the mission starts to become pleasing the coach. So if you have a guy who's just there to try to please the coach and make sure he looks good, the mission is not matching what scouts are looking for. Okay? Because in most cases, when a scout sees something that he likes, you think about it, he doesn't really care how you got to that point. He just cares that, hey, I like, and I like what I see, and we're interested. So keep that in mind. Now, you have the other person who also practices, but he has misguided intent. Now, misguided intent could be maybe a hitter who's told that ground balls are the answer. Don't worry about how hard you hit the ball. Be a line drive ground ball hitter. Just working on oppo. Don't worry about power. It could be a guy throwing that is always told, just throw strikes, just work on your mechanics. The speed will come. So he's putting in a lot of practice and just not developing what the scouts are looking for. Okay, he's just simply misguided. And then you have the third part of the process, which is somebody that may be a little closer to having the right mission, but he's just, I call it a lack of awareness guy, or also known as a meathead. And if you look at those guys, those are the guys that they don't adjust very fast, because they just simply, they go do what they do. And when things are off, they really don't pay attention or close attention to how they're failing. And very specifically, they're terrible at making adjustments. So this might be a guy who does throw hard. He gets on the mound and throws hard. He can't throw a strike, and he can't adjust to get back in the strike zone. Or a hitter that goes up to the plate and hits the ball on the ground 8 out of 12 times over a weekend and is very slow to adjust. And nothing frustrates coaches more than guys who are slow to adjust. The best players I've ever worked with have been tremendous at adjusting. And then the last person is really kind of, the one that frustrates coaches the most too is having no specific purpose. They will practice, but they're the go through the motion guys. They think and confuse activity with productivity. They think because they're doing something that means they're getting better, and that is not the case at all. They don't practice with a purpose whatsoever at all. So that becomes a huge problem. So I'm going to give you a couple what I would say training secrets here, and I'll start with this, is make sure your training is matching what scouts are looking for by one thing really simple, and that is having the intent to produce what scouts are looking for. So, for example, really simply put, you can't swing faster by swinging slower, and you can't hit harder by hitting softer. You can't throw faster or throw further by throwing slower and shorter. So if your intent is not to swing faster or throw faster, very likely you're recreating, you're programming your body to move slower and maybe more accurately, or depending on what your goal is, but is not to be explosive. And that is where being coached up in what I call too much of a technique world, you're in a technique-dominated world versus an intent-dominated environment or world, whatever you want to call it, is a problem, okay? So clearly what we see is, for example, if I was training a younger player, great example, if I want him, say he's a 7-8-year-old kid, and I'm going to develop arm strength over time, is you may start off with throwing at a certain distance, but as he's throwing and you can see the accuracy being good, you would then slowly start to back up. And now as he's throwing, as you're starting to back up, he's throwing more accurately. Very gradually, you'd slowly back up. And that kind of is a slow, long progression to the point where in 3 years, he's going to be throwing the ball a lot further and a lot more accurately. You can do that without ever teaching a kid how to throw. That is allowing him to learn through training himself how to throw. And the same thing goes for hitting. And I'll give you an example of a great concept in developing more power for a hitter, as we call it the tee distance drill. Just take a tee out to short center field and allow your kid to say, all right, all I want you to do is drive the ball over the fence or hit the ball off the fence. And if you hit it off the fence or over the fence 7 out of 10 times, you have mastered level 1. Congratulations. If you do that, back the tee up 10 feet and move on to level 2. But you do not move on to level 3 until you've mastered level 2, which is 70% success rate. So what starts to happen is you slowly over time keep backing the tee up and backing the tee up, and that could also be in BP and soft toss, and you slowly increase your distance. Now what starts to happen is if you have an inefficient swing, you're not going to drive the ball off the fence, or you're not even going to one-hop the fence, you're not going to two-hop the fence, and you're not going to hit it over the fence. Okay, your swing disconnect will start to show up. So over time, and it could take you a year, could take you 2 years, could take you several years, the goal would be to slowly get that tee all the way back to home plate, or to do your soft toss from home plate, or to do your BP from home plate. You're literally training your player how to drive the ball over the fence and how to hit the ball off the fence. And what we do specifically on that is we also then eventually reward them for hitting the ball one-hopping the fence, two-hopping the fence when the distance starts getting really, really challenging, including over the fence. So, and then when we get to a point where we really have somebody mastering this, if we're taking batting practice, for example, every ball should go to the fence somehow in some way. That's a sign of being more of a connected hitter. So that is also training with the mission to hit the ball harder and farther. Now, I've seen this. If you've ever seen a high school kid sit on a tee and hit the ball 330 feet over the fence, that's pretty impressive to be able to do that. But it would take a lot of time, but it is, again, developing. It's matching what the scouts are looking for, which is power. And the same thing for my example with throwing. So a lot of people out there will go, okay, well, Coach, it doesn't sound like you really care that much about technique. And nothing could be further from the truth. We just approach how we arrive at good technique completely different. Now, there is a thing that we would call being efficient, and that's what I want to give you here as well. So when we look at efficiency, now here's an example of an inefficient guy, a guy who throws hard, throws accurate, but his arm always hurts. That is a guy who probably has an inefficient movement pattern. So we let the arm pain show us and guide us in terms of inefficiency. And in terms of hitting, an example would be a guy could swing a bat 100 miles per hour, but he's not going to hit the ball 100 miles an hour. He swings the bat 100 miles an hour, but the ball comes off his bat maybe 20 miles an hour. Or the ball doesn't have very good flight. Or he swings and misses a lot. He fouls a lot of balls off. That's an inefficient hitter. So in order to build efficiency, the one thing we do almost on a daily basis in our classes and our camps when we train at fastball is we put hitters and really our throwers through three categories. We talk about first of all, we understand that there's certain things great players will do alike. Great throwers, great hitters. So the first thing we want to give them is a chance to see it. And by using video as an outline, they get to see how hitters or world-class throwers are alike when they throw. And it puts the visual in their head. Now, this is important because there's a lot of people out there who are coaching who they might use a picture, but they won't show the video. They're only taking pieces to prove what they're showing, but not the whole picture. So I think video is very important. So the first thing we do is we have a station where hitters get to, for example, hitters will get to see what they're going to work on. And then the next station is creating a way so they can feel it. And the feel is basically drills set up to mimic the movements of great hitters. And that's where our drill series come in. And then the third set is then to test it. So for example, if the hitter is working on changing a movement pattern or improving a movement pattern, we go test it to make sure we test to see, is there improvement in how hard they're hitting the ball, how the ball flight is improving, is the timing improving, and or is the bat speed improving. So if you're making a change, it doesn't necessarily mean you're improving. And that's where the third phase comes of this in the testing phase. So a lot of people out there are practicing very hard, and they're practicing the wrong things. And objectively, if you're not testing it as a part of your regular process, then you start to get exposed of running in the wrong direction enthusiastically in terms of your training could be hurting you. So in terms of efficiency, what we do is we see it, we feel it, and then we test it. Or another way to look at it is we see it, we feel it, and then we speed things up. And we want to make sure that not only are we being explosive, but we're also being efficient. That's a very important concept. So the question to you to run with after this podcast is done, is your training with your current instructor or your current team, is it matching the mission of what scouts are looking for? And if it's not, you have to recheck and really look at what you're doing, because time is not something we have a lot of, obviously none of us, so we want to make sure we're maximizing our time. If you have any questions about that, I wrote a book, again, it's called Creating the 100 Mile Per Hour Hitter. It could be applied towards hitting or even throwing some of those concepts. I go over in that book a simple formula of training somebody to become a more world-class, powerful baseball player, in this case for hitting. That way people understand that they're training towards what scouts are actually looking for. If you have any questions about that, also send me an email, fastballusa@hotmail.com. And as we get ready to close up this podcast, I want to recognize one of our superstar students, one of our students who actually just committed to North Central College. His name is Joey Hanley. Joey Hanley is has been named the Athlete Ambassador by the Epilepsy Foundation for Athletes vs. Epilepsy. Joey has struggled with epilepsy throughout his high school career, and there's an article in the Northwest Herald. You could look it up in the Northwest Herald, Google Joey Hanley, and you could read about his story there. But Joey is a great kid where he's had a lot of battles with this throughout his high school career. He's battled losing velocity and trying to gain it back. And Joey's just been an inspiration to me personally, and really to many of us at Fastball USA, because he has had to overcome a lot. and he's not a kid that has made excuses along the way, and he's a guy who's just so positive to be around. It's just unbelievable. Joey, this fall, was named the Athlete Ambassador by the Epilepsy Foundation for Athletes vs. Epilepsy. So one thing he's doing is he's got a T-shirt fundraiser where you can donate or purchase T-shirts to support the cause, and T-shirts are only $10. So if you do me a favor, contact Joey and order some T-shirts. You can contact him by his email, Joey Hanley, Joeeh, obviously, Hanley at AOL.com. And if you have any questions, you could also email me that as well. And just to close this down, just remember a few things. Number one, starting next month, we believe big time that mental or mindset is so huge in our training that about 5 years ago, I started bringing in a world-class mental game trainer. He is with what they call 3 into 4. His name is Adam Katowski. And Adam comes into our facility twice a month and works with our athletes, usually on a Sunday. The dates are on our website. Check that out. Regardless of what your situation is, I would definitely recommend getting in there, working with Adam. He works with our groups a couple times a month, twice in December, twice in January, twice in February. It's an outstanding program. And it's a type of thing where it could start in a group setting, and if you want it to eventually become a one-on-one, Adam has been great with our athletes. I look at, again, back to a time thing. So many people put so much effort into the physical side of things where we could just be that much better and that much more efficient if we were just stronger from the neck up. So Adam Katowski does a great job. Check that out on our website. Also, our new Elite Explosive Hitting Camp start in 2016. The Elite Explosive Hitting Camp, what we did is we added a day to the camp, and every guy gets a power training toolbox. And what that is we give you a radar measuring device. We give you a tool to help improve your technique. We give you a written 21-day process to follow after the camp. We give you, after a month, we give you a free video analysis after the camp as a follow-up to make sure you're doing that right. And then we give you the power hitting formula in a book, in that 100-mile-an-hour hitting book. That starts next year. Check out the dates. The Elite Explosive Hitting Camp is January 22nd to the 24th, February 12th to the 14th, and then we also have a youth camp in March as well. And then for those of you who do want to, all three, the big three, throw faster, run faster, hit harder, we've also had the Total Baseball Elite Camps. It'll be 3 days in December, 3 days in January, 3 days in February. You can go to any one or multiple of those camps, and that is designed to really reinforce and train you everything we just talked about in this podcast, which is really developing the big three so you are going to stand out better to pro and college scouts. Again, if you have any questions, check out our website, www.fastballusa.com, or send me an email, fastballusa@hotmail.com. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on our next podcast. And remember, when you try not to be common, think about it in terms of what Herb Brooks says, common people go nowhere. You need to be uncommon. Have a great day.